Welcome to Writers Not Writing, a show where I interview authors about the ways they procrastinate and highlight artists who are using their voices to push back against fascism. I'm Benjamin Gorman, your friendly author in exile, and the quiet guy behind the glass there is Doug the producer. I write novels and collections of poetry and stuff. Doug does his best to try to make me sound better. Welcome to Writers Not Writing. You're going to enjoy today's show. And if you want a little more, become a patron of my Patreon, and you'll get access to an ad-free version of the show with a bonus segment with each interviewee. Even free members get that, but let's keep that a secret.
If I take my time.
Hail and well met readers and reviewers. Welcome to Writers Not Writing. I am very excited about today's show. Today's guest is Desiree Batiste. Desiree is a poet and author from Arizona who focuses primarily on writing poems based on her experience as a child abuse and domestic violence survivor. She really wants her words to make a connection with anyone who has had a similar experience or those experiencing mental health issues as a result of past trauma. Welcome, Desiree. Very glad to have you here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So can you give the audience a little bit of background about what brings you to your work?
Well, as you said, I'm a child abuse and domestic violence survivor. I've been left with anxiety disorders, PTSD, depression, and a lot of physical health issues as a result of what happened. And I decided to put together a collection of the best poems that I had written starting from when I was 16 in 1995 to the present at that time, which was 2022. And I ended up self-publishing that in December of 2022. I listed it on Amazon. It's the only one of my two books right now that actually has any type of rating, but it's 4.7 out of 5 stars. So I'm kind of psyched about that.
Yeah, not bad.
So that's good.
That's good. But
yeah,
folks out there listening, review. It makes a big difference to authors.
Yeah. But I just thought to myself, if someone had told me that I had deserved better back when I was going through everything and that I shouldn't be afraid I could start from nothing, reinvent myself, then I wouldn't have stayed stuck for so long. And so I decided if my suffering was going to mean anything, I wanted to be a voice to others and be that for someone else so that they know that they're not alone and that there is life after what they've been through and that they can do it. So it was very cathartic, but it also was very motivating for me, to know that if I just help even one person, it's totally worth it. So
yeah, and then you're right. That is so important to just get to that point where you go, oh, I don't deserve this. I deserve better than this. And that
exactly
is a real turning point. And sometimes we need that other voice to just let us know this is not okay. That's really vital. So, in this time we are living in, everybody who is watching this is aware of what is going on. I think it's so important for writers to be pushing back in different ways, right? Because the situation is so complicated. So what's an idea you'd like to share with readers about how to push back in this time of rising fascism?
Well, I would say I really believe that the first step in pushing back has to be your voice in whatever form that takes. Just because they happen to be shouting above us doesn't mean that there isn't more of us. So I just feel like once we've proudly declared our stance against the growing evil threatening our rights in our country, then we can expand that stance as much as we can. History has shown sometimes it takes more than words to make a triumph against what's wrong. And while I hope it doesn't take that much, it really looks like it's heading that direction. So I would just say my advice is do whatever you feel you can, post on social media, talk to people, go to protests that support your beliefs. Alexander Hamilton, Malcolm X, and Aaron Tippin hit the nail on the head when they said, you've got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything. So.
Yeah, well, and it goes to what we were talking about before, in the same way that when somebody is in an unhealthy interpersonal relationship and they need to hear this isn't right, I think there are a lot of folks out there who are kind of going, I don't know what to do, but I feel like I'm isolated and
Yes.
hearing, oh no, there are a lot of people who agree with me that this is not acceptable.
Hmm.
It's the same kind of helping people escape trauma. It's just a national trauma.
It's very, very similar because there are so many people right now that are not speaking out against what they see because they are terrified of what's going to happen to them. They see that anybody that's resisting right now, they're getting like fired from the government and they're getting, hauled off in immigration raids and stuff. And so it's like those people have so much to lose. And it's like, well, what if that happens to me? But they need to understand that if we all get together, that it's not just one single person that they can particularly single out now. It's like a mass of us,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
Try and incarcerate everyone who was involved in the no Key.
Right.
There are not enough, people to round them up. And so, but that's
Hmm.
the kind of action that is required, that kind of massive collective action. And you're right, it
Yeah.
starts with people just saying on social media, I'm with you. This is
Hmm.
not acceptable. Um,
Hmm.
so one of the things you were talking about is those folks are very loud. And one of the things that can get lost is, some stories get a lot of attention
Hmm.
reasonably, a war in Iran is a very scary prospect. But what are some stories that you are hearing about and learning about and saying this isn't getting enough attention right now?
Well, I think you're totally right. I think that people really need to look for the details because what they'll put out in front of you is just this vague overlay summary of, hey, this is what's going on. And it's, of course, like the most flashy, attention getting thing that, could possibly be put out there. But if you read into the fine print and like dig a little bit deeper, you actually find out what the true issue is that you should be concerned with. Like, for an example, the big beautiful tax bill, most of the media was sitting there focusing, saying that the left was concerned about the bill wasn't cutting enough wasteful spending and it was going to add to our national deficit. What very few were talking about was the hidden provision in the bill, which severely restricts the federal court's authority to hold government officials in contempt if they violate judicial orders. So, of course, that is a blatant right out there
Yeah.
trying to benefit this administration kind of thing, and that is frightening.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, in this 1,000-page bill, it's a half page. Like it's a small thing, and yet sweeping power because it just takes
yeah,
away any accountability. If a court
yeah,
says
it's
you can't
it's
do that,
aimed it's
okay.
aimed right at the rule of law and separation of powers, and it's just I don't know, it's those little details that if you get them and you put them together like a puzzle, it's painting the whole picture of actually what's happening instead of the little blurb that you get, from the
Exactly.
media. So,
Yeah, I think that's a really important one. I hope folks are aware of that. This eliminates the enforcement power of an entire branch of government. Like
exactly.
now the White House gets to go. President Andrew Jackson was the first to refuse a Supreme Court order and
Mhm.
then caused the Trail of Tears. And he was, prohibited from doing so by the Supreme Court. And he said, let them enforce it. I have the army, right? And this takes away that enforcement power. Okay, we could at least throw you as an individual in jail if you refuse, not if you can't hold somebody in contempt. So, yeah,
And to me, it's a clear picture of, our separation of powers has for a long time been like a three-legged stool. If you take one of those legs out, it's not going to stand. The rest of it's all just going to fall apart. And I mean, there were subtle signs like right there, even in the beginning, when he was sworn into office, he didn't put his hand on the Bible, which should have been concerning to a lot of people because you're swearing to uphold the Constitution and we can see what's going on, that that's not happening. And the Constitution actually was even removed from the White House website.
yeah.
So,
I saw a wild little clip from an interview yesterday. I'm trying to remember which Republican senator it was who said that the War Powers Act was, he felt, unconstitutional. And
mhm.
so he didn't understand that is literally the power to declare war is Congress's in the Constitution. So we've now gotten to that Orwellian point where they're saying the Constitution is unconstitutional. Unconstitutional
Yes.
has just become this term that they use to say thing I don't like, and they're perfectly
Mm-hmm.
willing to say the Constitution itself is unconstitutional, which
Yep.
just is, and it's that kind of thing that, again, this goes back to those interpersonal relationships. One of the hallmarks of an abuser is that gaslighting, right?
Yes.
Making you feel like you're crazy, and you're going,
Mm-hmm.
"Am I crazy? You just called the Constitution unconstitutional. How can that be?"
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But say it with this authority, you keep someone enthralled.
Very true. And I gotta say, I really agree with the analogy because it's been very, I don't know, it's kind of triggered my PTSD a little
Mhm.
bit in some ways
Yeah,
because this relationship that we all have with our government right now is so toxic.
yeah,
It's just reminding me of being under somebody's thumb and nobody's listening to common sense and
yeah,
things like that. And it's just so unnerving.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, and I think a lot of people who have not had that experience in interpersonal relationships are even less prepared, right?
yes.
They don't have the knowledge that this is how you escape. This is how you
Mhm.
recognize your own value and say, I will not abide by this. They've never been there before. Uh,
Right.
so so when you are dealing with all this, I mean, it can get just emotionally overwhelming.
Hmm.
What is something that has allowed you to, take a break, take some mental health time and escape from it a little bit in terms of, the media you're consuming so that it's a little healthier?
Well, I do divert quite a bit to binge watching like movies.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I'm actually starting to become a horror movie buff, which is weird because I always really disliked horror movies, but my husband's a huge fan, and so he's thrown one thing in front of me after another, and now I'm actually trying to get into it a little bit. So,
Yeah. No, there's something deeply cathartic about going, oh, I can vent this fear about something fictional rather
yeah.
than feeling afraid of reality for a while. And so it's always surprising, and then it kind of makes sense when, the world is scary, people turn to horror because it's
Yeah.
a way of going, okay, I would rather be scared of the guy in the hockey mask.
Yes, exactly. And I can honestly say no movie that I've seen so far scares me more than what's happening right
Right,
now.
right.
So,
So what kinds of what are some of the ones that your husband's been, pushing on you lately in terms of his horror fandoms?
let's see. What did we watch? We watched The Wounded Fawn last night, which
Ooh, I
was
don't know that one.
kind of weird.
Yeah.
Um, it's about a serial killer that like courts his victims and like starts dating them and stuff, and then he brings them back to his cabin to kill them. And I guess the one that he brings there in the beginning of the movie is the one that ends up like breaking the whole thing down.
Yeah.
And he's crazy. Like he sees this owl every time he's supposed to kill someone and
Oh,
everything. It was really weird, but very good because he got injured real bad and there was like a patch right here where he had a hole and you could see like his skull piece was like missing.
yeah.
So he was really, really injured. And so he started seeing like a lot of things that really didn't make sense, prior victims and, just weird things happening. And then whenever they finally show you what's happening at the end, it's crazy. So,
Wounded Fawn. Okay, that's
yeah.
my wife and I watched one on Netflix. I'm trying to remember what the title of it was that was based on a true story about this guy who went and already was a murderer, but
Mhm.
was then on the dating game. I think it was the
Yes.
dating game.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking
Rodney,
about?
Rodney Alcala. Yeah.
Yeah. And the movie version is the whole time, it's just incredibly taut. You're going,
Yes.
don't be near that guy. Don't, and
Yes.
it's very well done. I'll have to, I'll look up the title and put it in the show notes. So folks, by the time you're
Yeah.
watching this, if you scroll down, you'll see it in the show notes, but it's a different kind of horror. It's not a slasher. It's just a psychological thriller where the whole
Yeah.
time you're going, oh my gosh, no. But,
Oh, yeah. No, that one always blew my mind because I was like, how are you going to put someone on TV you know, it would be bad enough if like you put them on TV and like they're an alcoholic or something,
Right.
like they're not an upstanding person, but like you straight up let a rapist and a serial killer walk onto
Yeah.
the national stage.
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
don't get that.
Yeah. Well, you know, in the
Crazy.
United States, we make them president. So, you know, it's um okay, well, I wanted to take a little time to have you share some of the poetry from your two collections. I think that would be
Okay.
really cool for folks to hear that. So I'm going to make you full screen here,
Okay.
and you know we can just enjoy a couple of pieces from. So let folks know which book these come from.
Yeah, so this is my first book. It's called The Shaping of a Diamond, and it is on Amazon, but there's also a link to it on my author website as well, which goes straight to the purchase place. So the first one that I was going to share today is called The Light, and it's about the first super negative thing that happened to me when I was young. I was very young. So I was only 8. I remember like it was yesterday, the heavy, oppressive weight, the night he took the light away. I had been full of innocence, dreams, and love in my eyes. In the darkness, full of suspense, just how dark I was soon to realize. He said we were playing a game. My head then hit the table. Nothing was ever again the same. My world became unstable. I woke not knowing what happened. I just knew something was wrong. My happiness forever dampened. I tried so hard to be strong. My head had a bump on the back. My panties were across the room. My light had faded to black. His evil presence did loom. I felt pain. I felt shame. I felt rage. I felt blame. I tried to cope with what he had done. I tried to let it go. After all, he was the pastor's son, and he thought no one would ever know. I masked the pain by smoking. I tried to fake a smile, but the sadness left me choking. Just a mess, no longer a child. I tried to tell my mother years later. She finally believed, but would not aid. Instead of a shoulder to cry on, she was a traitor. I told his parents, but they said to stop the charade. I walled my heart off to life. I swore to never trust. Raw pain that cut like a knife because of another's lust. I spent 5 years in mourning, pushing everyone away until I met the first boy I loved who came to save the day. We were 14. He loved me completely, never cross or mean, held on to me so sweetly. I held on to love 2 years until one fateful day, one of my greatest fears came true and he was taken away. Car crash, a drunk at the wheel, his rib cage crushed in, so much pain. They said he was gone. I dropped to kneel. I knew without him I'd go insane. A later mistake would bring back my light, but that's another tale. One that holds a chance I might overcome this darkness and prevail.
Oh, so powerful, excellent, but also horrifying. Okay, give us another one.
Okay, so this one actually is the continuation of that tale, how it said, you know, that's another tale. This was when I tried to commit suicide when I was 16 and what happened. So it's called The Promise. The 300 pills went down with a thud, sitting in the alcohol cocktail I threw on top of them. My eyes grew heavy. I felt like crud, a tragic end to a tragic femme. My body and soul began to separate. I threw up, but I couldn't feel it. I knew by then it was way too late, a broken heart with no way to heal it. My eyes opened somewhere else. I was floating above the ground on my back. Was this some kind of evil spell? It felt like I was under attack. The landscape around me was brown and dead. I've never felt such fear. My mind just wanted to be back in my bed or anywhere else but here. I felt a dread heavier than a ton of bricks. It started to choke my soul. Suicide was clearly one of the devil's tricks, and falling for it, I had lost control. I remember a tear coming out of my eye, me realizing it was too late. The worry in me grew, and I couldn't say why. likely because I started grasping my fate. I thought to myself, I wish I could start over, but I knew I had no chance. In hell, there are no four-leaf clover, so I just zoned out into a trance. Then I felt a shift of direction, a pull of the flow. Before I could have a minute of reflection, a change of speed, and off I go. It was no longer a death desert. That was gone in a blink. The landscape began to convert before I could even think. When I focused my vision, I just saw light, and I peered into its center. I felt love, strength, and might because I sat before my mentor. I knew him immediately. His eyes were piercing, like Tiffany stained glass windows. He was surrounded by a beautiful green meadow clearing. Over top of my amazement, his voice rose. Why can't you see your beauty as I see it in my heart? You've gone from just being moody to tearing yourself apart. I could see how I looked in the reflection of his eyes. I wasn't ugly and small. It was then that it sunk in and I realized the enormity of it all. This was God. There was no more doubt. He cared for me more than anyone ever had. In my stupidest time of need, he helped me out, helped to bring something good out of something bad. He told me that he was proud of me and that I would get my second chance. There was one condition, you see, as I looked around at the great expanse. He said, make me a promise now that you will never throw your life away. I need to hear you vow that you know why you need to stay. I was honest and said it hurt too much losing love, having Mark ripped away. I said it's easy to ask things like that when he's above and doesn't have to feel this way. He told me that I was mistaken. He'd lost loved ones too. Even though I felt forsaken, he was there to see me through. He didn't want me to be among the lost. He said I'd always have love, but never to pay so high a cost, thinking to punch out early and return to him above. I still had life to give. I still had things to do. I still had much to give. I knew it all was true. My mind tried to process this. God is real. He is here. But back home were others who began to miss me because I wasn't near. I woke up in the hospital, tears running down my face. I'm just a stupid teenager, not an apostle. Who the hell will believe this wild goose chase? Someone told me it didn't matter whether anyone else believes. There will always be negative chatter from Satan and all those he deceives. I just have to live my life well. Let my outcome be my story, since he saved me from the depths of hell to give me one more shot for his glory.
So do you want to give us a couple from the next?
Yeah, absolutely. This is my second book, Shimmering Brilliance. And again, the purchase links are all on my website and it's available on Amazon. However, Amazon kind of hid this one. I don't know why. The only way that you can really find it, like you can't search with my name or even with the book's name or anything, it doesn't come up. But like if you go to my first book and you go down to where it has the author description and click there, it shows both of my books there. So it's super weird.
Folks, go to your website. That's the best way.
Absolutely.
We'll have links to both in the show notes too.
Awesome. Okay, so the first one I'm going to do out of this one is called She Is Not Me, But I Am Her. It's basically the story of what I believe would happen if I was able to go back to my former self and have a logical conversation with them about what was coming. So, standing here now, the woman before you is nothing like the me of then. I cannot see how I survived all I went through. I knew I'd escape, just didn't know when. I wish somehow I could go back in time and talk to my former self, to chisel out wisdom into concrete ears. I wouldn't try to change my life or try to amass wealth, but just try to leave some comfort to pass the years. I still want the life I have now. It's all I could have wished for, and I'm thankful it's mine every day. But there's a part of me that doesn't like how behind every closed window and locked door stood an obstacle in my way. Obstacles make us grow and change. That's not the part I don't see, or why I'd reach out to the me that's malleable. I must ask, I find it so strange as I look over that past me. Did you not know that you're valuable? Of course you don't. That's why you gave up and threw your hopes away. You say you'll try harder, but you won't. All you say is, how high when someone says jump. You wish for no tomorrow because of the pain felt today. What would I say to her? That me of 1995 with strong will? I would gently take her hand and say, I know things are horrible, sure, and they'll get even worse still. But you need to hold fast to your faith. Remember, life is a miracle returned to you. This is a blessed second chance. Your decisions will shape the path we walk. She will know it's true. She will walk away without a second glance and think, thanks for the talk. But the words, they will take a while to sink in. A seed planted, which needs time to grow into the hedge maze we now traverse. Each time we get lost within, she will come to know when dealing with time, there is no reverse. The maze is changing behind us, giving us only options forward, pushing us toward the present. Each time we make a fuss or try to make the struggles beyond hard, the memory of our talk will be heaven sent. That wall behind us made of leaves pushing against our back, guiding us to the now. Cares not for sobs and heaves, cuts no slack, only knows you must move forward, but cares not how. Step after step, year after year, heartbreak time and again, scars that heal but never stop bleeding. Determination replaces fear, even at times when she cries she's not getting what she's needing. Do I think she will remember the words? Will she keep moving on our path, or will she go a different way? She'll be drawn to what she yearns. But how can you be sure? Picking leaves off my back, because I'm here now with you today.
Oh, I like that ending. Oh, that's okay. Yeah, one.
And then I got one more, and it's called The Wounded Knight. Covering my clay skull with these threadbare patches of flesh, then studying the helmet of hindsight, placing healing salve on these scorched lungs, jump-starting what pieces of my heart remain so that I can live life behind chainmail, metal sheets, and sarcasm. No weapon will ever penetrate these barriers again. Battle scars remain, as does this grizzled veteran who did nothing more than try to believe an open heart would lead to happiness. No one ever warned how devastating it can be when it fails. But alas, this visor will not raise again for any man, save the prince who was promised to her by the king who guards us all.
Oh, well, let's let the readers and listeners sit with those for a moment. We'll go to our commercial break.
Sounds good.
I'm going to ask you what you've been daydreaming about. Hey, readers and reviewers. I want to put out an all-call for guests who are fighting back against fascism. If you know an author or artist of any kind who is using their art or their platform to push back, especially if they are doing so in an interesting way that deserves more attention and support, share this show with them and encourage them to email NotAPipePublishing at NotAPipePublishing@gmail.com, and we'll get them scheduled. And if you're looking for inspiring or practical ways you can push back, be sure to subscribe to the show so you catch all the great guests folks are going to recommend. See you here each week. Fascist purges always begin with books. If you can't imagine a better future, you'll never fight for one.
At a time when oligarchs and politicians are trying to divide us, to scare us, to silence us, it's more important than ever to speak up, even when it sometimes feels like screaming into the void.
Celebrations of established foundations all of a sudden screeching, discordant, as the preachers become ignored by the God they adore, pathetic and
anti-fascist literature is
and the
one way
mumbling
we
of their
fight
last
back against the
years.
rising tide of hatred and ignorance that seeks to drown the sparks of empathy, community, and curiosity that are the birthright of all human beings.
And then maybe you understand. Never let them silence your voice. Never let them push you down. And never forget that your mommy loves you.
Through our stories and poems, we articulate our love for each other, our desire for justice, our need for freedom, and our determination to make a stand.
The seductive depths of the ocean are more appealing than physical contact with either of them. A mental stream of David Attenborough narration carries her through the awkwardness. Here, The larger of the two apex
Volume 1,
predators
the
demonstrates
Antifa Lit Journal, begins with Rachel A. Rosen's brilliant "What If We Kissed While Sinking a Billionaire's Yacht?" and takes the reader on a journey through rage, fear, and despair to a place of grace, hope, and motivation.
Fascists are like bindweed and blackberry in the garden. You can't eradicate them, but if you stay on top of your weeding, you can keep them from taking over.
By itself, it's not enough, but no single effort is. We must come together and embrace one another.
Media. The Enriquez kids came to my daycare until their dad got disappeared, Dolores said. Where were the signs and the singing when my brother died?
Protest, boycott, strike, demand your representatives do more, protect the vulnerable, and support the people who are fighting alongside you through their
The
art.
kind who sits comfortably where evil meets idiocy and drinks up what he's fed through tubes painted red like the doors of those they tell us are better off dead.
Back our Kickstarter and help us make the Antifa Lit Journal into the kind of community that will outlast the current fascist regime. Fight fascism with your voice while you still can.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm here with Desiree Batiste. And Desiree, when you've been daydreaming, what have you been daydreaming about?
Well, obviously for the country not to be like it is, but I think that's everyone's daydream right now. But on a personal level, I would say I've been working on a psychological thriller fiction novel for about 20 years now. It's because of my perfectionism and my OCD that it's not done. You know, I really am invested in the characters and making sure that the impossible stuff that doesn't exist yet with technology, that I describe it in a way that like kind of makes sense. So it doesn't just sound like some weird, you know, unrealistic thing or whatever. And
So it's set in the future?
yeah, like technology's way advanced. Like, you know, you could take a frozen embryo and grow them into like whatever age kid you want, just like that, you know.
Yeah.
that
Oh,
kind of thing.
I love, I mean, sci-fi cross-genre stuff. So sci-fi thrillers and that would be up my alley. I would enjoy that.
Yeah. So yeah, I keep adding to it, you know, doing some research, writing what I think is good, you know, get to a stopping point, walk away from it, come back, edit some, add some, you know. So it's been slow going, especially because, you know, I'm a crime buff. And so I want to get like the terminology and things right whenever I'm talking about like test results and things like that. So, you know, I've been doing a lot of, you know, research both with TV shows and online. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to get it finished sometime in the next 2 years. But I've said that like a million times before, so let's hope I do.
I was just reading, this was funny. There was a thread, somebody was posted some you know, kind of open-ended question. What is something people outside your field don't understand? And the kind of writer subversion of that got very funny. But it was, you know, it was people saying, you know, somebody said to me, hey, if you're not making money writing short fiction, why don't you just write a novel? Like that's easy and quick and profitable. And the person was pointing out that's years of work, and you might make $3,000 maybe if you're lucky. Like, you know, for years. I mean, it takes many years to write a novel.
I mean, it's like let me just pull War and Peace out of the air.
Right? Yeah, like I guess I didn't sell a short story. I guess I'll write a novel tomorrow. Like that's not the way it works at all.
No, not at all.
Years, you know, to write a book, and there's no reason that should be consistent. And yet I looked back and went, oh wait, I had one come out in 2015 and one come out in 2017, and oh, there's a pattern here. They are all about 2 years because the writing and the editing, you know, it's a long process. Well, I wish you luck on that. I am excited about it. That I think that's and it's a very satisfying process at the end.
Yes.
But boy, it's arduous. It's a lot. So yeah, if you could pull that off in 2 years, know that you've already got somebody who's excited to read it. That'll be cool.
Yay! Cool.
Yeah. So where can folks find you online?
Let's see. The best place is to go to my author website, which is www.authordesireebatiste.com. And if you scroll through the bottom of my webpage, all of my social media links are right there. It's got me reading one of my poems on YouTube. I made a slideshow for it, and previous podcasts I've been on, links to purchase my books and some background information and stuff. So
I will
probably the best place to
link
go.
to your website at the top of the show notes, so folks should absolutely check that out.
Okay.
So one of the things I'm always interested in when I'm interviewing authors is what is in your to be read pile? What are you looking forward to next?
Oh Lord, if you saw my to be read pal, you would just be like, good luck. But yeah. I actually am really, really into the Dragonlance book series, fantasy books. And there are a lot that go to different like trilogies or series of the genre that I haven't read yet. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. There's two primary authors that write them, Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, but there's a lot of other authors that do like some of the side quests and stuff like that. Douglas Niles, Mary Kirchhoff, Richard A. Knack, Don Perrin, and so I've got tons of books from that I want to fill into the story, and I mean, truthfully, Dragonlance is a lot like Star Wars in the sense that if you want to understand and get invested in the story, you kind of have to start with the Chronicles trilogy, which is jumping right in the middle, and then go back and then go forward.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, everything is explained as to why they're having the war during the Chronicles trilogy, and then it's like, oh wow, that happened that long ago and stuff, and so then you kind of want to go back and figure out what was happening during that time. And actually there's a book trilogy that's part of the forward movement that actually is about one of my favorite characters going back in time trying to change history. So there's like a part of that where you get to actually physically be there when the bad thing is happening, and it's just, it's so amazing. So
yes, I will. I love that. Epic fantasy. That's that's one of my preferred kind of mental escapes is, okay, I'm gonna go to this fictional universe with magic and dragons, and then that will that even if it is incredibly dramatic, at least I'm in this other world, so I should check that out.
Yeah, if you've never read it, I would say start with The Dragons of Autumn Twilight. That's the beginning book of the first trilogy, and then just kind of go from there.
Okay, I'll check that out. So who would you recommend would be a good guest to have on this show?
Actually, since you asked, our lovely anthology that just came out recently. One of the poems that actually caught me was by Kurt Newton called The Cycle.
Yes.
And that one just really hit home with how I feel and just comparable thoughts, I guess. Some stuff that I would agree with and want to say, but just said in a different way. And I was like, wow, so.
Yeah. Well, as the publisher, I read people's work and I send them a contract, and I've never had a conversation with Kurt Newton. So that would be cool to have him on. That would be really good.
Yeah, he would deserve it.
yeah, that would be good. Yes. And so, folks should absolutely check out that Antifa Lit Journal, Volume 1, What If We Kissed While Sinking a Billionaire's Yacht. There's just some incredibly talented people in there. And Desiree, I'm very glad for your work in there as well.
Yay! Me too.
Well, before we get to our send-off, there are some folks I need to thank. Thanks to the artist Max Oakland, who reached out and provided one of his songs for our intro song, I Prefer the Dusk. Let Max know you like it by following him on Twitter at Max Oakland with 3 Ds. And thanks to the author Stephen E. Scribner, who's the author of the Tond fantasy series, but who makes music under the name S. Eric Scribner. He donated the song A Poem from the album Pianosphere. We used that during the ad break. If you make music and you'd like your song used on the show, I'd love to highlight a listener's work like Max's or Steven's songs, so email me about that. Thanks as always to Doug, the producer, for making this show sound good and taking the blame when it doesn't. And I cannot forget to mention Writers Not Writing is a production of NotAPipePublishing. So please go to NotAPipePublishing.com, check out the amazing books written by writers who didn't procrastinate too much. If you like this show, rate and review it wherever you found it, and please check out Desiree's What are the titles of both? Let's make sure we hit those again.
The Shaping of a Diamond and Shimmering Brilliance.
Shaping of a Diamond and Shimmering Brilliance. So check those out. And after you have read them, please rate and review. It makes a huge difference. You click on that 5th star and you write just a few sentences and you will make Desiree's day. So please do that. And same for this show. Click on that thumbs up there on YouTube or whichever way you're engaging with the show, and makes a big difference. So Desiree and I want you to remember a couple of things as you go into your week. And the thing I keep telling folks is, please remember, all writing is political, speaking is political, not writing or speaking is also political, because silence maintains the status quo. So use your voice to make the world a better place. Desiree, what's your advice for everybody going into their week?
I would say faith is always stronger than fear. So root yourself in something that you really believe in and use that as your megaphone.
Here's a tiny bit of our bonus segment. Become a member of my Patreon and you can get the whole thing with no ads. What's something you wish people would ask you about that you don't get asked about enough?
I would say probably, and this is odd because most people who'd been through what I've been through would not want someone to ask them this, and probably would not want them to talk about it either. But I would say, because I've transitioned from victim to survivor, it's kind of different in my mind how it is. And that would be, what is like the most traumatic thing that happened to me that really like just had a huge impact on who I am today and like, you know, what I do.
Yeah. And so posing that question, what is the biggest trauma in terms of
if I take